So, by now, everyone should have known that Robin Williams died and that he was indeed suffering from depression. In fact, he'd been suffering from depression for years and no one really noticed, except the people that were indeed around him. I watched the video by Stefan Molyneux about the truth about Robin Williams. I suggest you guys go check it out. But more than that, then I watched another video by one of my favorite people here. He's a movie reviewer, and he was reviewing the movie Aladdin, because of Genie was in there, and he was trying to show that he wanted to talk about something good Robin Williams did. And I appreciated that. Then at the end, he said that every single dollar he makes off of AdSense revenue was going to go to the ADCD, I think. It was an organization that was supposed to spread awareness for depression. And it was really his commentaries, the things he said, the reviewer, that made me want to make this video. One thing that he said was he really wanted to make sure that depression goes away, and depression sucks, and we gotta find some way to get rid of depression. And he said that he's going to give all of his proceeds to a charity that was supposed to spread awareness of depression. Well, okay, spreading awareness isn't combating the issue. Okay, yeah, more people know that people will be depressed, but unless you actually give them tools on, one, how to deal with their depression, or give other people tools on how to deal with people who are indeed depressed, well, spreading awareness isn't going to do much of anything. So as an individual who has indeed been depressed and has dealt with people who have been depressed before, I thought I should talk about this briefly. Hopefully this video will only run about 10-15 minutes. It doesn't need to be really long, but hopefully I can get that out a little bit real fast. We'll talk about depression a little bit, and on my channel we'll talk about depression a little more, a little deeper, and more importantly give tools on how to deal with depression. So I guess this is really more of an overview. And I guess as an individual who was indeed depressed for much of my time in high school, I certainly understand what depression does, and I understand suicidal thoughts, and medication certainly is not a way to deal with depression. That being said, let's talk about this. So I guess the first thing that we really need to chat about is from the outside looking in. Because not everyone's dealing with depression, but probably more people have friends who are depressed more often than they think they do. So in order to deal with the problem, you have to know that it's there. So you have to be able to call out who is indeed depressed and what's going on, and then we can talk about how to deal with it. And so I have past and present tense friends who have been depressed and suicidal. That's why I allude to suicidal thoughts all the time. I've even said my ex-girlfriend has attempted to commit suicide twice. So she was, I don't know how she is now, but she definitely was a clinically depressed person who had to deal with lots of medication. And I had a friend of mine named Greg who killed himself, so he's not even here anymore. And I've had another friend of mine who's contemplated suicide. Lots of people who have been sad. So I understand what it's like to be in that position and how to deal with people who are also in that position. So the first thing you're going to have to do when it comes to people who are depressed is you're going to have to be able to recognize sadness from depression. Because one thing that I've noticed a lot about depressed people is oftentimes they don't seem depressed. What sadness really is, you can really point and click out people who are sad. Sadness is a temporary emotion that usually comes from trauma or comes from a negative experience of something happening, and it's very temporary, and it doesn't linger for a very long time. And the person may, usually when someone is sad, they outwardly express their sadness. So if someone is constantly telling you that they're sad and they're depressed, they probably really aren't depressed. They're more of having a bout with sadness, and that can last for a couple of weeks to a month. But sadness usually doesn't last as long. Depression lasts for months, and usually what characterizes depression is a feeling of emptiness. It's a feeling of being void and being lonely. But the thing is about depressed people is they do not wear it on their sleeve. And you're going to see like lots of actors, like depressed people make the best actors because they've been doing it for years. They've been acting for years. Right? So usually what you'll find in a lot of depressed people is they act very, very happy. A lot of depressed people I have talked to are some of the best comedians. They're laughing all the time. They have the greatest smiles, but underneath that smile is just pain and anger and loneliness. And even I myself, when I was depressed, I did the same thing. Like, I made everything a fucking joke when I was depressed. Everything was a joke. I didn't take bloody shit seriously when I was depressed, and I was always trying to make other people laugh because I didn't want to, deal with what was going on because I was sad. I didn't want to face it down, so I was always laughing, I was always smiling, I was always trying to get people, to be happy. But because I had to deal with a bunch of jackasses, my problems always ran smack into my face because I was always dealing with someone who just didn't fucking like me. But for the most part, if someone who is depressed isn't really like dealing with bullies or isn't really dealing with that, or a lot of people who are depressed do deal with bullies, you'd never know. You'd never know. Because, like I said, they put on this mask that they're so happy, and again, they look like they look so happy, so in control, so open, so available, but they're not, and that's one of the hardest things about depression is you're very rarely going to know that someone who is depressed is indeed depressed, So I guess usually, I mean, you gotta call them out, and eventually it'll always get to a certain point where they can't take it anymore. And I guess this is the part where the person is going to have to learn how to deal with an individual who is indeed depressed. And that would be when someone opens up to you, because every now and again they're going to crack. They can't, the mask is going to crack every now and again, and they're not going to be able to take it because they've been holding it in so much, and they're not going to be able to know how to deal with it. And again, I've had that several times. So the most important part about when you're dealing with people who are depressed is never giving up on them. And I guess, and what I mean by that is you can't tell someone who's depressed that you love them. You gotta show them. And by showing them love, I mean trying to protect them, trying to make them happy for a change instead of them always entertaining you. You kind of have to instill time into that person. You have to show someone who is depressed that, one, that they mean something, because remember, they're void. They don't have anything inside of them. They're sad, they're angry, you gotta give them time to vent, you gotta give them a space to let it out, you know what I'm saying? Because the next part of people who are indeed depressed is they have like explosions of anger, because like I said, you've been holding it in so much and eventually get to a point where you can't take it anymore. So if you're an angry and depressed person, you're gonna get explosions of anger from these people, and the most important thing to realize is if you are on the receiving end of someone who is, and it seems random, it seems like it doesn't make any fucking sense as to why they're so angry, it's probably because they're depressed and they've been holding it in so long. So what you've got to do is you got to be Batman. You got to take it. You got to take it when you're dealing with someone who's depressed. When they finally release all that anger, you got to bear that cross. And of course you got to give them some time. You got to help them through that anger. But that will happen eventually if you're dealing with someone who is sad and depressed. So I guess to recap real fast, two things. One, depressed people very rarely seem to be depressed. And two, every now and again you will get a burst of anger, just a huge fireball of rage. And sometimes, and this is where the whole trigger warning bullshit comes from Tumblr, because a lot of people on Tumblr are depressed. Shocker, right? And you see it on Tumblr all of the time, where someone will say something about rape or whatever, what other trigger words, it doesn't matter. You're going to see so many outbursts on Tumblr and so many pages on Tumblr where they're just going to say, just vent, let it out. And that's because Tumblr is a cesspool of very depressed and sad people, and it's just fucking sad and depressing. But yeah, that's what you're going to deal with. You're going to deal with someone who is depressed. And someone who is indeed suicidal, because depression usually leads to suicide. And the thing about the depressed person is again, it's not really that they're sad, it's that they're void. They feel empty, And the thing is, when you're dealing with the depressed person, is you have to realize is that depression is not a battle that can be won from the outside. What I mean by that is, you cannot just simply tell people that you love them, you care about them, you want them to be there for you, and expect the depression to go away. Because for a time, that will hopefully give them the strength to continue to battle depression. But depression is a battle that the individual themselves must face down and defeat. It is a demon that they have to slay. It is not something that a psychiatrist can fix. And the psychiatrist usually isn't actually there to fix the problem. They're usually there to give them tools on how the person's going to fix it themselves. The psychiatrist isn't there, to just give you medication and say, alright, go off and be fucking sad for the whole day. Because a lot of depression pills actually make people even more depressed or even sadder, you know. And I guess that leads to the third thing about the depressed person is they love to self-medicate. My ex-girlfriend, what she had ADD, and she had like these, not Ritalin pills, it was some type of medication she used to use, but if you overdosed on them, you would get high off of them. And she used to get high, she was hooked on these things, and get high all of the fucking time. And this is before I met her, and I know she did it a couple of times after I met her too. You know, and that's what they do. They self-medicate. This is why you see a lot of drunk alcoholics, a lot of people who are depressed love to smoke weed because it mellows them out. But yeah, those are really the three things. And self-medication isn't always something like with drugs. It can be anything really. I guess like a nervous tendency, or like reading all the time, or doing something. But those are pretty much the three things that are going to characterize someone who is indeed depressed. And now, the next reason why I have to say you kind of have to bear it with a depressed person is they don't have the tools to deal with their problems. So they will oftentimes, if you ever call a depressed person out on any issue or like anything that's happened to them, they're going to react negatively. You know, they're going to react very defensively and very angrily. You know, because not everybody wants help, or not everybody thinks they need help, or not everybody wants to be saved. And this was a huge conflict I had with my ex-girlfriend, because I was always trying to help her and instill some value and some worth in her, but that's really nothing I can do. That's something that the individual themselves has to do. They have to find value within themselves. You know, because it doesn't really matter how much you say, I love you and I need you. What matters is how the person views themselves. Now, I'm not saying that you don't tell them that you care about them. No, you absolutely do. But at the end of the day, you're not going to fix them. If you think that telling someone who's depressed that you love them is going to fix that depression, well, sorry, you're wasting your time. A battle of depression must be faced down by the individual who's dealing with depression. You know, so the most important thing is you gotta find out who's depressed. And you don't call them out, but you always leave the door open. You always tell them, hey man, if you need to talk to me, I got your back. Always be there for them. And it's tough dealing with people who are depressed. I'm not gonna bullshit anybody. I was probably a very difficult person to deal with. Some of the people I've talked to and dealt with were pretty fucking difficult. My ex-girlfriend. But you can't give up on them. You can't give up on people who are depressed. Not if you really care. I mean, if you don't care, well, I'm not sure why the fuck you're watching this video then. But you can't give up on a depressed person. So I guess recap, what's going on? So how do you know when someone's depressed versus sad? Well, one, they are depressed for a very long time. It is a long time thing. Two, that very oftentimes they don't seem depressed. They seem very, very, very happy and love to make people laugh and love not to take things seriously. And three, they self-medicate. They like to get hooked on drugs or like to drink alcohol. So those are three things that I've noticed a lot about depressed people. And yeah, so I guess the next couple of videos, not right now, but when I talk about depression, the next couple of videos will be giving tools to the people who are indeed depressed. But this video is more for the people to learn really what is depression and how to deal with people who are depressed and how to sort them out from people who are actually just really sad. Well, with that being said, man, I hope you guys learned some things from this video. And yeah, if you did, you can click that like button. You can click that subscribe button. You can also comment in the comment box below. But most importantly, have a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon.